Just wow.
You are really weird and gross. And floppy too.
Anyways.
Welcome to Juice School. I am Mrs. Slithers. Today we are going to talk about juice. But first, a pop quiz. Starting now. First question. What is juice?
Juice is everything. It is all around us.
Why are you here? To process and refine juice. Juice must flow.
Is there any greater honor than lifelong servitude to the Juice Queen?
No.
Is there anything out there, in the fog?
No. Is the sky made of plywood? Definitely not.
The first entity you'll meet in the Juice Galaxy is Mrs. Slithers. You spawn in her classroom. The only student besides your friend Ingot outside. Mrs. Slithers quizzes you on your purpose in this world. If you answer a question wrong,
Wrong answer. Prepare to die.
you respawn and have another chance, forced to answer her questions until you get them right. If you get them all right, she excuses you for a short recess.
All right, class. Time for recess.
Go outside for some exercise, then report back to the classroom.
Stay away from the far end of the playground.
Warning you to stay away from the thing on the other end of the playground. The only other student at recess is your friend Ingot, another juice entity, although he claims to be made out of metal. Ingot teaches you the combat in this game. When you do enough damage to him, he evaporates. Don't worry though, Ingot survives and comes back later. Before you juiced him, Ingot tells you that that thing at the end of the playground is a juice store, and you can open it by feeding it juice, which you just extracted from Ingot. The juice store has a massive wall on it with a mouth. You can open it by feeding it 100 juice.
Recess is over. Please report to class for your punishment. Student, back away.
When you drop through it, you find that Mrs. Slithers' classroom was only one tiny moon among many, all of them hovering above the endless expanse that is Juice Galaxy. Juice Galaxy initially came out in 2020. It's a physics-based RPG game made by a guy called Fishlicka. It's a super unserious game filled with goofy characters, but I'm going to be taking it way too seriously for this video. If you have any kind of problem with flashing lights, definitely don't watch this video. Juice Galaxy is a fun game, but it's super hard on the eyes. When you escape Mrs. Slithers' classroom, you drop into a graveyard. This is called your home in the game, and it's where most of the major NPCs hang out. Mr. Fox is a fox-like juice entity who's very skittish. Under threat of you eating him, he tells you to check out an evil cabin where a wizard used to live. Shiny is another entity who appears here and a couple other places in the game. He claims to have access to forbidden knowledge, which means he'll tell you about some of the game's mechanics and let you borrow his car. It's unclear how exactly a wooden sign drives a car, but it's called his car anyway. Given that this is a graveyard, the place is scattered with graves. If you break them, you meet your first enemy, Skellies. They're basically just human skeletons, but you have to wonder what they're doing here in a world made entirely out of juice. Maybe entirely isn't the right word, but almost entirely. Even the trees and rocks are made of juice and can be destroyed to absorb juice from them. On one of the graves in the graveyard is a bottle of juice that you can drink. In the middle of the place is a juice fountain, which you use to level up, exchanging the juice you've taken from enemies to empower yourself. Drinking this bottle has consequences though, as it draws the attention of a vampire. Ingot joked earlier about these, but he made sure to specify that vampires aren't actually real. As soon as you drink the juice, you hear the beat of giant wings approaching your location.
Good. Oh, get over here.
baddie is a juice vampire, and he steals all the juice you've collected, making you into a juice vampire in the process. What that means is that you can now suck up the bodies of enemies you beat to heal yourself. Baddie then leaves and is never seen again. Maybe in a future update you'll get to meet him and possibly get him back for forcing vampirism onto you. Anyway, Mrs. Slithers drilled into her head that there is nothing out there in the fog. It seems she had somewhere in mind that we would end up, spending our days harvesting juice for the Juice Queen. We'll see one such place later. Her teaching us that there is nothing in the fog would have been a great way to keep the entities at that juice farm in line. That place was definitely not the graveyard, as you can see the faint outlines of massive structures in the fog from here. There are 4 giants hidden in the fog. The closest one to the graveyard is also the biggest. It's called the Jared Fog Giant. We don't know why. It kind of resembles a frog, or the juice entities called polywogs. Another is called the Slain Fog Giant, and it resembles a giant juice entity killed with a massive sword. You can get the sword later. It's called Dragon Slayer, but spelled weirdly, so it's not copyright infringement. The Lanky Fog Giant is a structure that looks like a massive squatting man with his hands out. Finally is the Super Ripped Fog Giant, which looks like a muscular man. This one is unique, however, because you can find the giant's consciousness astral projected into a smaller form inside of the structure's mouth. This implies that all 4 of these giants are sentient creatures in some way, although they don't move, eat, or do anything besides silently watch over the landscape. The Super Ripped Giant might be astral projecting due to the weed growing in its eye, which he asks you to kill. I think this thing's name changes each time you play, but for me it was called Flowery Luso. The Luso doesn't attack you, rather it just sits in the eye socket of the giant singing all day. Which is the main point of annoyance for the Super Ripped guy. You have 2 choices with the Flowery Luso. You can either feed it more juice to help it grow larger and sing louder, or kill it for the Super Ripped Giant. The choice is up to you, but I actually kind of like it singing. The enemies of the Juice Plane are extremely varied. The most basic of them is the Polywog, a 2-legged creature with 1 hole on its face. Juice entities probably don't eat and drink like animals in our world, and we know that they don't breathe, so it's likely this hole is just used to suck up juice. The size of enemies in this game depends on their level. They can get huge in later areas. Polywogs seem to be pretty low on the food chain to me, especially compared to some of the creatures we're about to meet. Dragons are small lizard-like entities that drag themselves around on their stomach. These can also get huge, especially later in the pipes underneath the juice world. Koalaths are small blue entities that vaguely resemble something like a real-world koala bear. These never really get that big though. The Stroll Fiend are the largest entity you'll see in the early stages of the game, and later on they can get even bigger. Stroll Fiends are giant lanky entities that leisurely stroll around most of the time until they see you, at which point they'll chase. Stroll Fiends have a massive reach advantage on you, but they're pretty easy to outrun, or outfly when you upgrade your abilities later. Hellgrazers are these strange looking things with big black eyes, 4 limbs, weird tentacles coming out of their mouths, and a BBL. On the way to the Super Ripped Giant is a strangely human looking entity. He looks like an old man, yet is almost certainly a juice being like yourself. He's missing an eye, and as you talk to him he waves his hands around constantly, but he's friendly. If you ask him where you can find a juice smith, he'll tell you to seek out Hogan, who lives in a mushroom past the Super Ripped Giant. If you talk to Hogan with a weapon equipped, you have the option to either use juice to grow or shrink your weapons. If you talk to him without one, you can learn more about him. His first name is probably Hulk, but also he was just sung by an entity called a wasp. You can find these scattered around the overworld. Hogan asks if you'll go beat up on the wasps for him, and points you towards one of their nests. As you approach, you'll be swarmed by the wasps, which only continues as you go down the spiraling tunnel. At the bottom is the Wasp Queen, who taunts you before attacking you with her swarm of wasp protectors. Behind the queen is this constantly shifting purple palace. If you kill her, you get to explore it. As soon as you step in, you lose any sense of scale. This place is much bigger on the inside than it appears on the outside. You can get lost in the pulsating hallways, or you can find what the queen was trying to hide in here, her larva. They're in what looks like a daycare being watched over by Siny. The This guy really gets around. Shiny doesn't really care what you do with the larva, but he speculates that they'll probably be fine without their mother, as if a sign would know. You can find wasp nests all around the juice world, and they basically mirror this structure. It's up to you if you want to destroy them or not. I mean, Hogan only asked us to beat up on some wasps, not destroy their entire society. Near the Jared fog giant, the frog-looking one in case you forgot, you can find a structure that kind of resembles the Parthenon in Greece. Inside is Angrito, a small Iron Fist looking juiceling who'll teach you the art of juice manipulation, also known as console commands. Anyway, I think that's all the friendly NPCs for now. Your first real objective is to investigate that evil cabin that Mr. Fox mentioned. It's a pretty ordinary looking place. There's a bed, toilet, and an attic. Inside the attic is a strange entity that you can't really interact with. It's called the Koala Dog and it's completely unkillable, having far more health than damage you could ever deal. If you hit the Koala Dog, it'll start a strange line of dialogue.
So, you found your way here, have you?
You finally found me.
This sounds a lot like what an NPC in a minute will say. Maybe there's a connection. Of interest to us is the hatch on the floor, which opens the way to a vast cave system under the cabin. This place is filled with enemies. A new one introduced here are clowns. Small rubbery juice clowns that chase you around. The dragons and polywogs in particular are huge down here. You have to wonder what the source of these things is. You can push through the cave to find out. Along the way you can find Shiny hiding in a closed off room. He tells us that this cabin used to belong to some kind of wizard until a much nastier resident took over the place. Whatever scares Shiny should probably scare us too, but we're just a little weird juice man, so we push on. At the end of the winding caves is a large chasm filled with giant enemies and dead trees, all of them surrounding a hole in the ground that looks like the mouth of a dragon or some other ancient beast. When you drop down the hole, you meet that new resident Shiny warned us about.
Well. Look what they can. Tractor.
You finally found me.
Congratulations. Time to die.
You were trespassing on this plane.
And now, I'm gonna mess you up.
This is the Creator, and we can attribute the giant enemies upstairs to him. The Creator seems to recognize us. We can assume it's because he, either directly or indirectly, created the entity we play as. Maybe he created everything here, maybe he created Juice itself, but then what power does the Juice Queen have over him, if any? We never find out the answers as the Creator attacks, materializing giant polywogs to throw at us. Once he's thrown out enough of the creatures, he'll call them back to him, forming a tornado out of polywogs, which he then throws at you. It's a tough fight, but with enough juice spilled, we can kill the Creator and suck his juice like the vampire that we are.
Come back in 10,000 years.
I'll bet
You taste terrible.
Hello. Good to see you.
A portal opens that takes us back to the graveyard. Ingot is back, seemingly having regained his juice and escaped through the door which we left open. If you ask him about Mrs. Slithers, he'll say that she's pissed, which gives our character the idea to go back up and visit her. You can also talk to Mr. Fox again. Again, he fears that we'll eat him, so he tells us that the toilet in the evil cabin is backed up and we should go unclog it. You can choose whether to do that first or go see Mrs. Slithers, but it's likely your flying skill isn't high enough to visit your old teacher anyway. So let's head back to the old cabin. Some of the enemies have changed now. You can find clowns in the overworld and the average enemies are bigger. There's also a new enemy called the Cuttlebug, a huge spider-like creature that charges you on sight. Its intent is no doubt to cuddle with us, but even touching another juice entity in this game causes us to lose our own juice, taking damage, so you have to fight the Cuttlebugs off. At various points in the wilderness you might be attacked by Tony.
Greetings, weakling. I am Tony, the foot soldier. Prepare yourself to be crushed under the weight of my powerful fate.
A strange-looking entity who claims to be the Juice Queen's top foot soldier. Tony attacks on sight, enlarging his feet to try to hit you. He's not too tough this time, however Tony is a recurring enemy, and each time he finds you, he's stronger than the last time. Tony is likely after us because we escaped Juice School, thus meaning we're not fulfilling our predestined purpose of farming juice for the Queen. The Queen needs to send a message with us, but Tony is not that guy, at least not yet. When you reach the evil cabin again and try to flush the clogged toilet, it ends up flushing you down with it, sending you into the most confusing and eye-destroying part of the Juice Galaxy. Underneath the world is a massive network of sewer pipes. Just like how our pipes build up deposits of calcium over time, leading to a kind of crusty mineral look on the inside, these pipes have a buildup of crystallized juice. The enemies down here are huge as well. We get to see a new type, gators, which look probably how you would expect. These tunnels are very winding and confusing, with you often having to go underwater for long periods of time just to emerge into a new, even more confusing set of pipes. At the end of it though is Sergeant Sucker Punch, another very human-looking entity.
Another tourist enters this land of pipes. Listen, tourist, there is nothing here for you. Go back up the pipe and never return.
He attacks us on sight, and throughout the fight we get to learn why.
The clog punched off all my arms and legs and left me to die.
I have them replaced with these tools of war.
Even with these augmentations, I continue to fail.
Sergeant Sucker Punch came down here to destroy the clog, but it took his arms and legs during the fight. He replaced them with plungers, but so can't manage to unclog the pipe. His main form of attack is flinging himself at you in a tornado, and it's actually pretty damaging. It's a tough fight. Once we beat him though, Sergeant Sucker Punch gives us the plunger he planned to use against the clog, and we continue through the pipes. Finally, after what seemed like miles of sewer, we meet the clog.
The clog, and I don't move for nobody. So now, I'm gonna beat the life out of you.
A massive blob of juice with arms and a face. It may seem like this thing is just the byproduct of millions of gallons of juice going down the drain over the course of however long the Juice Galaxy has existed, but that's not exactly the case. Anyway, the only way to damage the clog is with the Sergeant's plunger, but the clog will absolutely crush you if it hits you with its hands, or if it manages to drag you under its seemingly endless body. Hitting it with the plunger will force the clog back, but if you can get it to not retreat, then you can hold the plunger against the clog's face. That's where the real damage happens. The clog is pretty difficult, but once you plunge it enough times, it flushes away, remarking that it failed its master. We can assume its master was probably the Juice Queen or maybe the creator. But why would they force a massive clogging of the Juice Galaxy's pipes?
You have no idea what you've just unleashed. Finally, after all this time. Swirly D
Has risen once
more.
Well, it turns out the clog wasn't just stopping things from going into the pipes beyond it, it was preventing something from getting out. Swirly D appears, draining the player of all their health with his lightning, then escaping into the Juice Galaxy to bring terror to everyone it sees.
time to go swirly some nerds.
You can now talk to almost every NPC, minus Signy, and they'll remark on how Swirly D bullied them and gave them a Swirly. The only exceptions are the super buff guy who says he scared Swirly off but is probably lying, and Hogan who says he gave Swirly a wedgie but he's also probably lying. As of now you don't actually get to fight Swirly D, which is probably a good thing. The D in his name stands for demon, so this guy is the Swirly Demon, who crawled out of hell to bully every single entity within the Juice Galaxy. If the Juice Queen herself could only trap him behind an endless clog, imagine what kind of power Swirly D is wielding. Despite that, the endless clog is now unclogged, and the Juice World once again has a functioning sewer system. By this time, the player has accumulated a lot of juice themselves. If you spec it into energy and flying, you can finally make the long flight back up to Mrs. Slithers' classroom. Back inside the tiny planet above the Juice World, we find that Mrs. Slithers is waiting, and she's not happy.
So you've returned. Did you enjoy yourself? Have you seen what you wanted to see?
Recess has been over for a long time, and you didn't even ask to leave campus.
You are in so much trouble. Prepare to die. Oh, that usually works. You've been drinking the juice, have you? Very good. Well,
Okay.
there is more than one way to correct problem behavior.
But we've grown since then and she has no authority over us. She tries to kill you using the Dragon Slayer, but she's honestly pretty bad at it. Her only other form of attack is raising skellies out of the ground, which she calls her students and alumni. That might have been our fate if we didn't leave when we had the chance. When you finally kill her, it's actually kinda sad.
If this is the way it must be, then let it. I only wanted to teach you the true meaning of juice. But you are not ready. No one is. Long live the juice queen. I'm going to take a long nap now. Don't bother me.
She was the first person we ever met in the Juice Galaxy, and while she's definitely not a nice person, maybe if we had been a better student things would have ended differently. Or maybe not, look at her alumni. The next time you return to the graveyard, you'll find that Mr. Fox is gone with no indication of where he went. Ingot and Signy don't seem too concerned. I mean, they're more of your friends than his, but still. Let's think about where he could have gone. Well, first he suggested that we clear out the creator from the basement of the evil cabin. Then he suggested that we clear out the clog in his toilet. So it makes sense that his plan this whole time was to move into the cabin once we'd cleaned the place up a little bit. When you go to investigate, you find Mr. Fox asleep on his bed, except he's completely unresponsive. You have the prompt to enter his dream, which drags you into a nightmare version of the cabin. Everything is twice as big and the fog is even denser outside. Mr. Fox can be found in the living room, terrified of something. He won't tell us what has him so scared, but he asks that we find all the pages of his journal, which he dropped when something attacked him. When you step outside, you hear some kind of voice. This dream area has some of the biggest enemies in the game. Polywogs, the size of buildings, and stroll fiends twice their height. As you search for pages, you soon find out who that voice belonged to. Some kind of apparition attacks you throughout the dream. If it touches you, you take crazy damage. When you find 5 pages, you get a notification that a hatch is open somewhere. Using some intuition, we can guess that it's the same hatch we used earlier to access the cave system where we fought the creator. The nightmare version of this place is even worse than the usual, with bigger monsters and even more clowns. A couple times down here you'll be chased by that apparition. This time it does so much damage it might even one-shot you if it touches you. This is where we find the last 2 notes, and once we do, the hatch we used to come in reopens. When you emerge into the nightmare plane, you find Mr. Fox outside of the house, terrified at what he saw chase you in there. Then the apparition appears again, except this time it's not an apparition. This is the Dream Eater, a massive entity that works for the Juice Queen. It's laid claim to Mr. Fox's soul, and presumably his juice as well, validating his constant fear of being eaten. Depending on your personal morals, you might not care about Mr. Fox, but Dream Eater crosses a line when he ties the fate of your own soul to that of Mr. Fox's, so now we have to fight him. This fight can be much more floaty than the others if you upgraded those skills. Dream Eater's main form of attack is just charging at you with its long arms stretched out, which does a lot of damage if he catches you. You should probably have a ranged weapon going into this fight, as otherwise Dream Eater will likely outmaneuver you. When you beat him though, Dream Eater remarks he's finally free. Seemingly his service to the Juice Queen wasn't his own choice. With Dream Eater gone, you can return to the real world where Mr. Fox has now woken up. He explains that he sprinkled some magic dust on himself accidentally, which is how the Dream Eater got its hold on him. Good job, buddy. At this point we've beaten all of the current bosses in Juice Galaxy, however we still have more to talk about. Once you've beaten Dream Eater, Ingot will ask you to take him to Bubbleton, a town far away from the graveyard where he says they know how to get down. When you take him there, you find a small village where entities made out of bubbles are forced to give up their own mass to create new bubbles, all watched over by the Grand Bubble. The Grand Bubble says many things that sound familiar, many of the same talking points that Mrs. Slithers tried to drill into us. I imagine if we hadn't escaped her school, and assuming we didn't end up like her precious alumni, we likely would have been sent to a juice farm, something like this. As it turns out, there's not actually any parties here in Bubbleton, only work, but Inget's idea of a party is popping the bubbles these poor entities have spent their entire lives building. Apparently this isn't the first time, as they know Inget and will try to put him in the bubble so they can resume their work. If you join in on the fun, they'll warn you that they only have a surplus of 8 bubbles. As you pop more and more, they'll warn you each time not to pop X amount of bubbles. If you ignore them and pop the bubbles anyway, the Bubblians turn hostile and attack. You can fight back, but you really only knock their juice out of them. You can't destroy the Grand Bubble or anything. Although the Grand Bubble will mention that they produce bubbles under threat of destruction by the Juice Queen, so maybe you and Inget's innocent fun will result in the death of all these poor Bubblians. At this point we've met all major NPCs, and I'm like 85% sure I've talked about all the enemies. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions, like who is the Juice Queen? What relation does she have to the creator? Why would she imprison Swirly D? Why does she force the entities to harvest juice for her? What does she need it for? What even is juice? I'm not going to say I have the answers to these questions. To be honest, I don't think there are answers. It's just a silly little game. But I said at the beginning I was taking this too seriously, so I intend to follow through with that. Now, let's investigate some of the claims of our former teacher, since we've now heard them repeated by another authority figure. We know that the claim, nothing is out there in the fog, is false, but what actually is out there? Everything important, like the old man's shack, the evil cabin, the fog giants, Hogan, are all extremely close to the graveyard. Bubbleton is a little farther, but what's past that? Well, the simple answer is nothing. Juice Galaxy's world is endless, but it goes a little deeper than that. As you go farther out, you'll find strange structures hidden in the mist. Buildings made out of strange black stone. They almost look like they're petrified. The same can be said for the ships you'll find and what look to be churches. These look like remnants of a much more familiar civilization that once lived here, one that looks a lot like our own. What might have happened to them? Disease, war, a meteor? Something must have petrified these buildings. It could have been a massive explosion, or maybe just the passage of time fossilized them. Who can say, as these structures are few and far between? Whatever happened to these people must have happened a long time ago. Except, you can also find a petrified fire hydrant, and it's even bigger than any of the buildings or ships you find. How does that make sense? Fire hydrants are tiny, how could this one be so large? Well, maybe they aren't petrified remains of an ancient civilization, maybe they're something else entirely. Hold that thought. Let's investigate another claim we've heard.
Is the sky made of plywood? Definitely not.
That's a weird thing to say, right? I never would have assumed the ceiling was made out of plywood until she mentioned that. I mean, our galaxy doesn't have a ceiling, so why would this one? Well, let's fly up and see. There's nothing, only endless sky. Let's fly a little further. We fly for minutes, far beyond the point any reasonable person would assume that the sky goes on forever. Maybe Mrs. Slithers wasn't lying for once. Maybe the ceiling really isn't made out of... Holy shit, the ceiling is made out of plywood. Someone must have found out about this at some point. Why else would the Juice Queen have it drilled into our head that the ceiling is explicitly not made of plywood? Who do we know that the Juice Queen tried to silence and imprison? Swirly D. The Swirly Demon must have uncovered this truth about the world, and that's why the Juice Queen trapped him behind the impassable clog. She knew none of her minions had the power to kill Swirly D. He'd gathered too much juice and became too powerful, kinda just like us. At this point we've killed the Creator, the Clog, Mrs. Slithers, and Dream Eater, all the most powerful minions of the Queen, which gave us the power to uncover the truth about our world. And what is that truth? Well, what if these petrified structures aren't relics of a bygone era at all? What if they're decorations? Like what you might put into a fish tank to let your little fishies hide in. What if the Juice Queen isn't like us? What if we're all living inside of an ecosystem she created, all for the purpose of farming whatever this juice substance is? We never see the Juice Queen in-game, nor has anybody, it seems. Nobody ever describes her, just mentions her by name and by reputation. Let's think about how she decided to get rid of Swirly D. You would think if she was this all-powerful entity, she could have just fought him, but she didn't. She tried to flush him down the drain, only to fail and have to block him in there with the clog. Also, the Grand Bubble specifically says that she'll blow them up if they don't deliver her bubbles, which doesn't seem like something an entity would do, given how the other Queen-aligned enemies in the game attack you. Let's also think about gravity in this game, or the lack of it. You can adjust this yourself if you want, but by default there is very little gravity in this game. It's almost like you're swimming. So here's my Juice Galaxy theory. The Juice Queen is a human and we live in her juice farm, a small little setup to her, but a massive galaxy to us. She harvests juice from this setup, which is created by us, the entities inside the juice ecosystem. When an entity becomes too powerful and starts beating out the competition, potentially threatening to escape from this ecosystem, like Swirly D, she tries to flush them down the drain. We're looking to be the next organism that becomes too powerful for its enclosed ecosystem. We've already eliminated all of the Queen's top predators, Tony, Dream Eater, Mrs. Slithers, and now she'll try to do us like how she did Swirly D. Little does our character know that he faces a being so far beyond his little juice mind's comprehension. Maybe in a future update we'll get to see how this plays out, but for now, this was me cataloging the Juice Galaxy. Like I said at the start, this game is very unserious and I doubt it'll ever have a complete story, but I had fun making this video anyway. If you don't mind eye strain and have an extra $5 laying around, check out Juice Galaxy. Thank you all so much for watching.